Well, here we are. It should be called a contraction lecture rather than an extension lecture because we've whittled the time away to half an hour. And that's my fault, but at least we're having an extension lecture. Today I wanted to talk about my heart. But instead I'm going to talk about cryptography. So let's have a look, see what we got. Go back to the lecture notes. Oh, gee, these are the longest lecture notes ever written. And I think I put it right down the bottom. We're talking about something called, well, I never know how to pronounce it. Let's say between us, it's called steganography. Shh, shh. If anyone knows how to pronounce it, actually, this would be a good time to tell me. Cool. Cool. Thank you. Let's just say it is. Steganography is the writing of secret messages. So in the old days, if I wanted to send a secret message to you, I had a couple of options available to me. You guys tell me, what sort of things could I do? I could encrypt it, encrypt the message. So you're my slave, say. I give you the message, you take it to him, you're a slave, you're planning revolt. You read the message isn't insecure in transit, but because it's encrypted with my diabolical Caesar cipher, you can never work it out, okay? Sorry, but I bet you do work it out because Caesar cipher is easy. But the idea is, if the message is traveling through an untrusted medium, I want to protect the message. So one way is, I encrypt the message. Yeah, really cool. Number two.
You write it in something that people can't see in the person.
Yeah. The other general approach is, I actually hide not the meaning of the message, I hide the actual existence of the message. That's called steganography, when you try and hide even that the message is there. Now, let me say, it's the poor cousin of encryption. But there's about enough to say about it that we can squeeze it into half an hour. So that's what, and it's sort of fun. So the idea is, what if I wanted to get a message from A to B? And I wanted to maintain my confidentiality of this message by making it so that no one would even know the message was there. So I don't necessarily need to encrypt it. I mean, I could encrypt it and hide it. Yeah, maybe. But I hopefully don't even need to encrypt it. I can just send it encoded, hidden. Steganography. This book here, one of my favourite books of all time, is called The Code Book. And it's by David Kahn, who's like a complete classic. He's like the father of the history of cryptography, I guess. It's an enormously fat book that covers everything up to the beginning of the 20th century really well, and is a bit weak after that. It's an amusing, full of all this historical stuff and how codes and ciphers developed over the ages and cultures and so on and so on and so on. And in the early days, a lot of people did steganography, so there's lots of funny stories about steganography in here. And I remember my favourite ones, and then before I came in here I thought, oh, I'm going to look it up on Wikipedia, see if there's any new stuff. And all my favourite stories are on Wikipedia already. And I thought, oh, bugger it. So it looks like I'm just reading off Wikipedia. So I'm not going to tell you my favourite stories, and you just go and read it off Wikipedia. But, or alternatively, you borrow this book from me, and, or get it yourself, and have the best time of your life reading this book, though it is quite fat. But well, let me do some of them. The classic one, the earliest classic examples are in some Greek, I mean the Greeks wrote what they did, so we have records of what the Greeks did. One Greek dude sent a message by, how did he do it? He shaved his slave's head. He tattooed the message on the head. He let the hair grow back, and then he sent the slave out holding another message. And the slave was captured, and they got the other message, and they let the slave go. And then the slave got to the other end and it seems very elaborate and a very slow way of sending a message. But okay, that's steganography. Another one was, they had wax tablets they used to write the message on. And I think what he did, oh, I wish I could remember this one properly. I think what he did was he wrote the message on the wood, and then he put paint on the message, and then he put wax on the paint, and then he wrote another message on the wax tablet. But that was like what we call the cover text, the irrelevant message. And then when the person got to the other end, all they did was remove the wax and strip, and the real message is hiding underneath. Think of James Bond films and things like that. They rarely use cryptography. They normally use steganography. How do they hide messages? Or Maxwell Smart. The enemy agent's got data. He's going to hide it. How does the enemy agent always hide the data? In his shoe. Yeah. Microdots, often. So You photograph the message and make it smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and then you put it like as a dot over the letter I in an otherwise innocuous letter. Yeah, that's steganography. Or another way that people actually used to do was the newspaper code. In fact, I think German agents use this, or the letter code. You'd send someone a newspaper or some innocuous piece of text, but with a pin, you'd put tiny little holes over some of the letters. And to read it back, you just hold it up to the light and only count the letters that had holes over them, and that would spell out the real message. Yeah, sort of cool. Or did you used to do this? You write it in lemon juice. And the cool thing is if you write it on a normal message and you heat it up. Okay. Right. So they're like examples of steganography. Now, let me just talk about some of the sort of, and digital watermarks. Do you guys know about that? A digital watermark goes something like this. I've got a picture that's really cool. Like we've got the videos of these lectures. They're so cool, aren't they? They're like works of art. They're like worth millions of dollars. But what if someone stole them and cut off my head and put on their head and made all the mistakes I did and walked around just like me? They could rip off our videos and all the millions of dollars in royalties, which are pouring into me right now as we speak, would go to them instead. Well, we could protect that. I'm completely joking, of course. They're all free and it's crap anyway. But we could protect that by encoding into the... Well, one way we could protect it is by sticking a big sign up here that says UNSW Computing. And then every time someone watches a video, they see UNSW Computing. Aha! But what could a bad guy do? He could cut it out and put in here UTS Computing. Now, in fact, I don't know if anyone's ever walked down the front, but there isn't actually a lecture theatre here. There's just an enormous projection screen. Thurston and Rupert are at the back, not with a camera, but with a projector. And we've ripped off all the UTS lectures, cut the head off of the lecturer, stuck my head on instead. And in this part here, we've actually ripped out the UTS and written UNSW. Believe that. So if someone knows that that's the piece of data that somehow gives away the important thing about the message, they can get rid of it. So the idea is, if you want to somehow stamp the thing as belonging to you, you can't do it with a stamp that anyone knows is there, or they can get rid of the stamp and put their own stamp in. I mean, you can just change a digital file like that. There's no record that it's ever changed. It's just changed. So a digital watermark works by having a watermark, like having a print on it, something that indicates it's yours, but that's hidden so no one can see that the watermark's there. Does that make sense? So how they do that, well, someone tell me, how do they do digital watermarking? Suppose we had an image, a bitmap image, and it was a picture of Marvin. Okay, we've got this picture. How can we watermark that picture? Get a hose. Yes?
Don't bitmaps usually have redundant data?
Bitmaps have lots of redundant data. Suppose this was a bitmap, which means it's not a compressed image file. It's just like there's 1 byte for every pixel here on the screen. And suppose this has like 1,000 pixels in it. Oh, it's going to have more than that, isn't it? Suppose it's got 1,000,000 pixels. Well, it's going to have less than that. Let's say it's got 1,000,000. It's got 1,000,000 pixels in there. And suppose every pixel, we store the colour of that pixel by storing a number. And the number stores the RGB value. So we get all the possible spectrum of numbers and we divide it into maybe we want to have 2 bytes to store a colour. How many bytes do people use to store colours normally?
24 bits.
24 bits. All right, so we have 3 bytes to store the colour. So how many bytes is the whole image going to take up then? We've got 1,000 pixels, 3 bytes to store the colour of every pixel. 3 million. Yeah, did I say 1,000? 3 million. So that'd be a 3 megabyte picture. With every pixel, the file would just contain a whole lot of numbers. For the first pixel, for the second pixel, for the third pixel, for the fourth pixel. And each of these numbers would be a 24-bit number that would record exactly what colour was there. Now, can your 24 bits, well, we know that 10 bits, 2 to the 10 is about 1,000. So 2 to the 20 is about 1,000,000. So 2 to the 24 is a couple of million. So that's millions and millions of colours. Can your eye tell the difference between colour number 427,916 and colour 427,917? Well, you should go with my wife when we pick colours for our kitchen, because I can never do it. I just say, That's definitely white. Yes, that's white. Yes, I like that one. That's white. That's white. Yes, and after a while, yes, they're all the same. They're all white. But they're not. And if you do it right, it looks beautiful. And if you do it bad, it looks terrible. And that's a skill I don't have. Okay, so there's redundant data in here in that your eye probably couldn't tell if I changed some of those bits around, could it? Probably wouldn't be able to tell if I just changed them a little bit, pick from one colour, flip to the adjacent colour. So why don't I say every 9th pixel, no, let's say every pixel. Every single pixel, I'm going to steal the last bit of that pixel. So there's only going to be 23 bits encoding the colour. And the 24th bit, the least significant bit, well, that'll still contribute to the colour, but I'm going to store a message there. And I'm going to use, how many bits does that give me to store a message? 1,000,000 bits. I can take 1 bit off every pixel. And I store my message there. I store it in binary, zeros and ones. I can store a megabit of information, and yet the picture looks exactly the same. Does that make sense? So that megabit of information could be something that says, this picture is copyright to UNSW. You know, if you look at it, you have to give us money. Yes? Yeah, so if you compress it, all that gets lost. Yeah. So the challenge with digital watermarks is to work out a way you can have the watermark in there that people can't get rid of it without completely buggering up the picture. So a watermark that only uses the last pixel, last bit of each pixel, that's a very fragile watermark, brittle, easy to change. A more clever watermark would use larger pieces of data and they'd have to make more significant changes to the distortions to the photo to get rid of them. And you could store the same data over and over again. So there's only 1 bit would have to get through, only 1 segment would have to get through. You know, this picture belongs to UNSW, this picture belongs to UNSW, this picture, said 1,000,000 times in there. And if they compressed it, but somehow one of them got through, no, I reckon compressing it would break everything. Yeah, so you can break the watermark that way. But you've also destroyed the original image too if you compress it.
You could change the hue of it by like a tiny fraction.
Yeah, you're thinking, well now, there's all these other things you can do. I mean, you can just shift things around, you can do, the idea is, in this picture, it's a beautiful picture, it takes a lot of space, there's a lot of information used to encode this picture. There's what we call redundancy. The information content of the picture is less than the amount of space we need to store the data to represent the picture. So you can change a picture in lots of subtle ways and really you haven't changed the picture at all, but you've changed the data. This is where you store your steganographic message, in the redundancy. So where's the redundancy on the slave? A slave's carrying a message. How can he carry a message? And everything about the slave is part of the message. So part of the redundancy is he's got a head, so you can put the message there. But it can even be, has anyone ever played the game? What's that?
Because you don't need that otherwise.
You don't need that otherwise. Yeah. I mean, it was in the army, I guess. This was a military campaign. They really liked their underlings not for this part, but for these parts. Oh, I can't remember what I was saying. Oh yeah, like has anyone ever played this game where you go, I draw a moon, 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth? Has anyone ever played that game? Is that an awesome game? What happens is I draw that picture, and everyone that's in the game nods and says, yeah, you drew the picture right. And then you give the chalk to someone else. Do you want to go up there?
What am I doing?
You've got to do what I just did then.
I just walked in.
You say, I draw a moon, 2 eyes, nose, and mouth. Well done. Okay, sit down. But did he get it right, everyone that knows about the game? No, he didn't get it right. But that was a really good try. Well done. And sorry I made you do that just as you walked in. Do you want to do it?
Not really.
Do you want to do it?
No.
Who wants to do it? The idea is we can play this game for a long time. You want to do it? Come down. We can play this game for a long time. You've got to somehow reproduce what I'm doing to get it. You're welcome. You've got to reproduce what I'm doing exactly. But the thing is, there's a whole lot of redundancy in what's going on. You've got to say, I draw a moon, 2 eyes, nose, mouth. No. Well done. But that was very close. It was very close. Do you want me to draw it again one last time? Okay. I draw a moon, 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. Who reckons they can draw that?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, come down.
Oh, sorry.
Well done.
A moon, 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth.
Oh, well done. She got it. Awesome. Well done. Thank you. Is it Abby? Is that right? Yeah. Abby worked it out. That what I was doing was I was folding my hands when I was finished. There's a whole lot of information when you're watching me. Which is the important part of the message, which is irrelevant. The steganography is you hide the data in the bits of the message that people think are irrelevant. Okay, now, there's sort of there's a really important idea in security, which is called security by obscurity. Have I talked about that before? Security, well, I've just seen Alex here. Alex, you want to tell us what is security by obscurity?
Security by obscurity is relying on someone not knowing something that's not actually part of your secret, or relying on that being secret, or someone just not knowing how you've done it, rather than there being an actual secret that you're hiding, that the security relies on.
Yes, I mean, that's right, that's right. I've got to think of another way of saying it. 'Cause the meaning of that was hidden using security by obscurity. Would you say? Yeah, yeah. Security by obscurity is the secrecy resides in some sort of secret, something obscure happening, rather than the secret residing in some sort of strength. So if I get all my money and I lock it in a safe, that's security. If I get all my money and I bury it in the woods, in a place where when the moon is full on the first thing of the thing, the shadow from the tree points to the spot, okay, shh, don't tell anyone. I reckon that's pretty safe too. But they're protected in different ways. How's the money in the safe protected? By the safe. How's the money in the woods protected? By no one knowing it. If you knew it, where it was, you could get it. It's the obscurity of it that keeps it hidden. Does that make sense? Now, what Alex was sort of pointing out was that really all security eventually comes down to security by obscurity, because where's the security by obscurity in the safe? You don't know the combination. So there's still a bit of obscurity. But the idea in cryptography, the idea to be really secure, not in cryptography, in security in general, is you make the obscurity element as small as you can. And you get most of your strength residing from actual strong measures rather than people just not knowing stuff. Because it turns out constantly over history, whenever we've protected something and we think it's safe because people will never work it out, what happens? People always work it out. Either someone that knows about it has a lover that's a Russian spy, or someone that knows about it is kidnapped and beaten up, or someone that knows about it is offered money as a bribe and tells you, or your machine. If I have an encoding machine and it encodes messages brilliantly, but if you could get hold of the machine and analyse the machine, you could work out how the encryption worked. That's security by obscurity. I'm just relying on you not having that machine. And you can bet one day someone's going to lose one of those machines and then we're stuffed. But if knowing the machine wouldn't help you, yeah, like this is the problem with the Enigma machine. You know, we're talking about Turing. We found an Enigma machine. That didn't really negate the German security at all. Just told us how they did the encryption. But the point was you have to type a special key in to make the thing work. And there were like a trillion gazillion possible keys you could type in. So just knowing how the message was encrypted didn't actually help them, wasn't enough to decrypt it. There was that small security by obscurity, not knowing how the machine worked, but most of the security resided in the complexity of the algorithm used by the complexity of the jumbling that the machine did, and the small amount of obscurity which changed for every message, which was the key used for the message. Finding the machine didn't give you the message key. Does that make sense? So do you understand, in security, we reckon security by obscurity is bad. But of course, in practice, most people, when they first start doing security, they try and do all their security through obscurity. Like once I gave some high school kids a challenge. I said, can you write a program to encrypt a message and keep it secret? And they all wrote these programs to do it. And I said, the challenge is I'll try and crack your programs. They all wrote programs to do it, but all their security relied on the fact that what they did was so complicated they reckoned I could never undo it. Yeah. They didn't know I had time on my hands. But if what they did resided on some really elaborate mathematical property that you could prove couldn't be undone, or we knew for various practical reasons was extremely intractable to undo, then it doesn't matter if I know how their thing works, I still can't undo it. Does that make sense? What's steganography? It's completely security by obscurity. So that's why it's sort of like the poor cousin to encryption. Most people sort of poo-poo security by obscurity these days because we just know it doesn't last. Secrets get out. You can't have a secret. If everything relies on a secret not getting out, you're stuffed because the secret's going to get out, especially if it's a secret that more than you know. If two or more people are involved, you're stuffed. So steganography sort of drifted away a bit. It's not really in the limelight. It's not the favoured brother. But I sort of think it's really fun. So I'd like to just return to talking about it a little bit at all. Okay, so we've got The newspaper story with the dots, the microdots. Oh no, I've got newspaper and dots and microdots. Don't know what that means. The finger. Oh, this is one I got off Wikipedia. But it's a famous one. I remember it too. Some US soldiers were captured by, do you remember this story, Alex? Is it the Koreans or something? And they were forced to show that they'd defected and they were happy and they'd confessed they were spies. And they took photos of them all relaxing, and the Koreans or whoever it was published these photos saying, these guys have defected and ha ha ha, US, your people prefer to live in our country rather than your country and things like that. But what they didn't know, because in the photo, the US guys are all sitting around relaxed and so on and so on and so on. Presumably off screen there's a whole lot of people with machine guns pointed at them, so saying, be relaxed. But they're all going like this to the people taking the photo. And because it wasn't a gesture that the people taking the photo recognised, the message, the thing sort of got through. Is that what you're remembering about that story? Yeah.
It's still used a bit. Current day special forces will just cross their fingers in a photo if they're under duress.
If you're under duress, you cross your fingers. Oh, that's so cool.
I don't think they do that anymore.
Well, I guess not. Yeah, but they'll have something else. They'll have something else. Yeah, they'll have a way of doing it. Because there's so much data redundancy. If there's an image of the person shown or the person can say or do anything, there's so much information that person's transmitting by the way their fingers go, where they cross their arms, how their heads, how they pronounce their syllables. There's so much extra way you can encode meaning. All right, so let's be quick. Before I get to covert channels and digital elections, acrostics. Who knows about acrostics? Yeah, they're really fun. Someone, who was that? Was that Dane? Yeah, shoot.
Acrostic problems like that, there's a word or something down the side, and you put goes along side of the next word.
That's right. It's like the hidden message is you take the first letter of every word and you get the hidden message. And I was reading this really cool book, which to me, if it was sitting on top of this book, is just about as fat, is even better than this book, is Godel Escher Bach. I've talked about it before. I was reading this really cool book, Godel Escher Bach, and he was talking about hidden messages and information content and the meaning of messages and so on and so on and so on. And he started talking about how people encode things with acrostics. And it was in this little dialogue between these characters that were all chatting. And one of them said, hey, I wonder if you could actually hide, like, what would be really cool is if you could hide an acrostic inside an acrostic. So like, you took the first letter of every word, and that gave you like a message. But actually, if you took the first letter of every word in that message, you got like a hidden inner message, and you could just keep doing that. And I was thinking, oh, that's so cool, that's really funny. And like, I kept reading it, I was thinking, that's so cool. And then suddenly I thought, hang on. And I went back to that dialogue, and I went and took the first letter, and he'd done it. He's a very clever man. So basically this book, which I really enjoy, called Godel Escher Bach, I would say I enjoy it because of its steganography. The cool thing about this book is when you're reading this book, there's about 9 things happening at every given instant. It's got messages happening at every level. And you can completely enjoy it because of the cover text. The cover text is interesting. But if you look a bit closer, he's doing something else. And you look a bit closer, he's doing something else. And you can just go as deep as you want. And he's always one step ahead of you. So it's the most amazing book. Now, I've got to say, this book, I know I keep talking about it, it's sort of my inspiration for teaching. My plan when I teach is I reckon there's so much stuff to cover. There's so many things I want you guys to know, and so many elaborate, I want you to be nice people, I want you to know how to operate in groups, I want you to know good style, I want you to know programming, I want you to know security, I want you to know a million things. If we sat down and wrote out the list of all the things I wanted you to know, and I allocated a lecture to each one, we'd be at uni forever and we'd never be able to do it. So my plan for teaching is, and also we've got this other dilemma that some of you are interested in this and some are interested in that, and some have got experience and some don't have experience, and some have never programmed before and some love C. So my plan, I think, for a well-constructed lecture is it should be existing on lots of levels simultaneously. There should be lots of messages happening in lots of levels. And I should be doing something, and at the one hand, you would think I'm doing a joke, but on the other hand, you might realise next week, or you might never realise, what I was doing was modelling the thing we were just about to do. Or I might be explaining something, and the way I'm explaining it is simultaneously illustrating another thing, and I'll never mention it. It's just hiding in there. And my idea of a good play or a good book is exactly the same. You read it, and no matter how much effort you put in trying to interpret it, there's always something new and rich there. So the people that want to put an enormous effort in get completely satisfied. And the people that just want to go along and have a laugh, they get completely satisfied too. And this reminds me of my favourite, not favourite, but one of my favourite films of all time. Has anyone ever seen the film Starship Troopers? Such a good film. It's this really clever film. Now, it's based on a book by Robert Heinlein. Now, Robert Heinlein's like one of these science fiction writers. It's a bit like Orson Scott Card, for me anyway, that when you read them, on the one hand, you're intrigued and entranced and in love with it, and on the other hand, you're repulsed and revolted and ashamed, because it sort of appeals to this, oh, out you go. Ender, you must leave. Because it appeals to this sort of really like fascist side of you. So when he writes the book, in any Robert Heinlein book, there's always like some hero, a protagonist, who's wonderful, who's fantastic, who perhaps people doubt at the beginning, but goes on to be amazing. And because of the way it's written, you always identify with that person. So you are that person. So you're someone fantastic. And as the book develops, this fantastic person does fantastic things in spite of all the stupidity and ignorance and pathetic people around him. And it's this book that sort of scorns other people, and it makes you feel fantastic about yourselves, and also makes you think that other people, and they talks about other people as sheep, and and it's quite okay to massacre them and do all these terrible things to them because you're fantastic and they're terrible. And the book sort of builds up. So on the one hand, you get this great pleasure because you're the most wonderful person in the world. And on the other hand, when you stop and think about it, it's a bit repulsive. So I used to get these really guilty pleasure. I love reading the books. I couldn't stop reading them. But afterwards you go, I don't know. So when I heard there was a film of a Robert Heinlein book out, Starship Troopers, I thought, I got to see it. But I'm going to hate it. But I got to see it. It's going to be good. And I saw the film, and it is a perfect film. It's a steganographic film. Because I watch this film with all my redneck friends, and they're all laughing. They're going, it's blood and guts and disgusting, and it's a slapstick thing, and there's breasts, and it's just, it's this complete piece of trash and filth and exploitation and just revolting. But on another level, the director is doing this really insightful steganographic message where he's completely criticising Robert Heinlein simultaneously for all the sort of fascist things he does. Now, the cool thing about the film, and what I think makes it such a perfect film, and what I would love to achieve in a lecture, but you don't ever aspire to, is you can watch the film and be completely satisfied on either level. None of my redneck friends believe it has the slightest bit of deep depth to this film, and they'll watch it over and over again and laugh and laugh and laugh. And yet, my friends that are into film theory and things like that, we sit around and we laugh at it for completely different reasons, because it's outrageous what he does. And for years I used to have debates with my friends. Look, but can't you see it's really about this, even though it looks like it's about that? And they'd go, no, it isn't. And when it came out on DVD, I got the DVD because I thought, this is the one time I actually want to hear what the director says, because everyone thinks I'm insane. I thought, I wonder if he'll leak out. I wonder if there'll be a little hidden message and the director will give a clue that he's actually making fun at some of the ideas in the book. And so I turn on the director's commentary and the thing's rolling and the credits are rolling and the audio guy's there and someone else is talking, they're talking and the director's there. And the audio guy goes, hey, look, do you notice those shadows on the thing on the ground? Do you sort of notice that looks a bit like the Nazi symbol? I mean, it's not exactly Nazi, but it looks a bit Nazi. Could you say in a way that was deliberate on your part, that you were sort of... And, he goes, and there's this sort of pause, and then the director goes, of course it's deliberate! Everyone always asks me if it's deliberate. And he goes off his head, and he just slathers for about 10 minutes saying how the film's this great satire and da-da-da-da. And I thought, oh, cool, I don't even need to listen to any more of the director's commentary. Now, maybe if I'd kept listening, there's a hidden, redneck message under the subtle message or something. So for me, steganography is an amazing thing. Now, I was looking in Wikipedia. This is a crazy way of giving lectures off Wikipedia, but I did learn some cool new things that I didn't know. Apparently, HP printers use steganography. Do people know that? They put little tiny microdots on your printouts that actually timestamp the serial number of your printer and the date it was printed and all sorts of other stuff. Do you know about this?
Yeah, basically, because they don't want people using colour laser printers to make money,
yes.
There's a couple of different technologies for
yes.
embedding the printer serial number.
Yes, yes.
And then you trace back to a retail location,
yes.
and if you pay with a credit card, then they can...
Fantastic. Oh, look, I really love government surveillance. That's an excellent thing.
The original one was they just used yellow ink
yes.
barcodes
yes.
of the serial numbers to print on every page. And then they went to things like they'd slightly offset.
Oh, awesome. That's fantastic. I really love that. That's really cool. Yes.
With those printers, they actually, when they try and print American money, they
yes.
just stop and
yes.
lock up.
Yes.
And you have to actually call HP order to get them fixed.
Yes.
Because, I mean, say you're just printing out an advertisement which has a bit of money in it.
Yes.
It'll stop printing because it seems that you're trying to print out money.
Well, wouldn't you accept that as a challenge? Yeah, how can I print this in several passes so that... No, well, that's fantastic. Steganography. Look, I had some other stuff to say, but we've... All right, last two things. Can I just talk about SETI and God? And we'll skip most of the other things I had to say. SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. We get a whole lot of radio crap from the sky. There's lots of information coming in constantly from outer space, and we can detect it. How would we... And so maybe, this crazy idea someone had, maybe there's other life elsewhere in the universe, and maybe they think in the same sort of timescale we think, and maybe they have the same sort of interests we have, and maybe they'd try and communicate with us, maybe. So all these maybes. how would they do it? And one way is maybe they're sending them messages. I mean, everyone knows light travels across space, maybe encoded in the electromagnetic frequencies falling on Earth are messages. So there's this project now of people all the time searching through these messages, looking for the random messages, the cover text, looking for a steganographic message from the aliens. Now, the interesting thing is the message isn't steganographic because the aliens are trying to hide it. Where does the steganography come from here? We can't understand it. They don't talk like us. We don't have the same mind. We don't even have the same frame of reference probably. So the message is likely there, but we can't. So it's the same question with steganography. How can you even find the existence of the message? What's the clue that a message is even there? So there's a lot of cool stuff to say about SETI that we don't have much time to say for. And God, oh well, look, I haven't got much time to talk about God, but suppose some people do this game where they think, oh, the universe could be a simulation, oh, we could be living in the Matrix, oh, blah, 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 you know, that sort of stuff. And there's various philosophical arguments about that. And one of them is, if in the future we ever develop computers powerful enough to do a reasonable simulation, so we can play The Sims or whatever that game you're all excited about now, what is it? Yeah, Grand Theft Auto 4 or something, is it? Okay. If we could ever create some sort of world that was so immersive and real and simulated to such a level of detail that it was actually like a real simulation of the universe, and it was really well done, how would the creatures in that game know if they were people or not? Okay. So if they were existence or not. And someone thought, wow, if we ever had the power to do that, then it would be so easy to simulate worlds that suppose there is one real universe, it would be easier to simulate 1 billion universes. And just by the law of averages, anyone that's self-aware is more likely to be in a simulated universe than a real universe. So how could you work out if you were in a real universe or a simulated universe? And there are these interesting tests you can do. And they've got a little bit to do with steganography. But we'll talk about that another time. Okay, that was all we're going to say. Thank you very much, everyone. Everyone should get Godel Escher Bach and the code book.